Rain hit the stone steps in cold, hard sheets. Wind off the lake cut through Imani's wet dress and stung her cheeks. She knelt on the front porch of the Coleman Lake house, fingers numb, watching her suitcase slide into a muddy puddle at the bottom of the stairs. A minute ago that suitcase had sat inside on shiny wood floors. Now brown water splashed over the leather, like the house itself was spitting her out. Behind her, the heavy front door slammed. The sound was sharp and final, like a judge's hammer. She heard the lock turn with a hard click. Then came the laughter. It started as a small giggle and grew louder, higher, meaner. Through the thick glass, Imani heard Evelyn Coleman's voice, sweet as honey when guests were there, now sharp as a knife. "Look at her," Evelyn said. 7 days a widow and already back where she belongs. Out in the cold. Brianna, or Bree, as everyone called her, laughed even louder. "Send her back to that shack in Maple Creek," she said. That's all Darius thought she was worth. The words hit harder than the rain. Imani did not scream. She did not bang on the door. She pressed her palm to the wet stone to keep from falling over. Her teeth shook from the cold, but the real chill sat inside her chest like a rock. 7 days ago, this had been her home. 7 days ago, she had walked through that same door as Mrs. Imani Coleman, wife of Darius Coleman, the quiet man with the deep laugh who used to pull her close when family dinners got tense. Now she was a problem to be pushed outside. If you have ever felt like someone closed a door on you and locked it from the inside, this story is for you. Before we go on, take a second. Hit the like button so more people can hear this story. And if you enjoy long real-life stories like this, remember to subscribe to the channel. It helps a lot more than you think. Tonight did not really start on the porch, with a suitcase in a puddle and rain on Imani's face. It started earlier that day, in the biggest room of the house, the room with tall windows that looked over the dark water of the lake. It was a gray fall afternoon outside Chicago. The trees along the shore had already turned red and gold. Inside, the Coleman living room looked like something from a magazine. Deep blue couches, a white stone fireplace, silver frames lined up on the wall, full of smiling faces. None of those faces were Imani's. She sat at the far end of a velvet sofa, hands clasped in her lap, the black fabric of her dress a little loose on her. Grief had taken weight from her in the last 6 months. Her head wrap, simple and dark, held back curls she had not bothered to style. Her eyes had shadows under them from too many nights, staring at a ceiling and listening for a voice that could no longer answer her. Across from her sat Evelyn Coleman, Darius' mother. Evelyn wore black too, but the soft, rich kind that flowed when she moved. Diamonds flashed at her ears and on her wrist every time she reached for her teacup. Her hair was set in perfect waves, not a strand out of place. To a stranger, she would look like the picture of grace, a strong mother bearing loss with style. Imani knew better. She had spent 5 years watching the way Evelyn's lips tightened whenever Imani spoke at the dinner table. She had seen the quick roll of the eyes, the small sighs, the way Evelyn would lean toward a guest and say, "Imani is still learning how we do things in this family," like Imani was a child and not a grown woman before she ever met Darius. Next to Evelyn sat Bri, Darius' younger sister. Bri sparkled in a fitted black dress that looked more like something for a party than for grief. Her nails were long and sharp, her makeup fresh, not a single tear track anywhere on her smooth brown face. She scrolled her phone, then locked it when she looked up and caught Imani watching her. "What?" Bri asked, one eyebrow raised. "Nothing," Imani said softly. The truth pressed at the back of her throat. She wanted to say, "My husband just died." "Your brother just died? Why does it look like you are getting ready for a night out, not a will reading?" But the words stayed where they were. This was not her house. Not really. It had never been, not in Evelyn's eyes. Now, 7 days after she had watched them lower Darius into the ground, she sat in that same room, waiting to hear exactly how little she was worth. A clock somewhere in the house ticked too loud. The air felt thick, not from grief, but from waiting. The only true sign of a funeral was the black clothes. The faces, the eyes, the straight backs, told a different story. They were not mourning. They were expecting. The front door opened, and all 3 women turned to look. A man stepped into the room. He shook rain from his gray coat and ran a hand over his short silver hair. He was in his 50s, tall and straight, with a serious, closed face. This was Sterling Price, the attorney who had handled Darius' business for years. Imani had seen him at the hospital once. Darius had spoken to him in a low voice in the hall, while Imani sat by the bed and tried not to look afraid. That day, Sterling had nodded to her from the doorway. Today, his eyes flicked to her again, and something like pity passed over his face before he smoothed it away. "Mr. Price," Evelyn said, standing up. "Please, sit. I hope the drive was not too hard." The rain started so suddenly. Sterling gave her a formal smile and took the armchair facing the sofa. He set his slim black briefcase on the coffee table. "The roads are fine, Mrs. Coleman." "I am here by the express wish of your son, Mr. Darius Coleman. He asked that I read his last will and testament to you myself." At the word will, Bree straightened in her seat. She tucked her phone away at last. Her eyes had a quick, hungry light in them. Imani's bare fingers curled into her dress. She was not thinking of money. Darius had never talked much about what he owned. She knew he worked long hours. She knew the company, Solaris Group, had grown fast. The cars in the garage and the art on the walls had told their own story. What she wanted now, more than any check or key, was to hear that somewhere, on a page, he had called her by name and said, "Imani matters to me. Imani is not a mistake. Imani is my choice." Sterling opened the briefcase. The soft click of the metal locks sounded too loud in the quiet room. He took out a thick white envelope, sealed and marked with Darius' name in neat black letters. For a second his hand rested on the flap, like even he did not want to open it. Then he drew in a breath, broke the seal, and pulled out several sheets of paper. "Before we begin," he said, "I want to remind everyone that these are Darius' legal wishes. My job is only to read them." Evelyn nodded, lips pressed together. Bree smiled a little, as if she already knew what was inside. Imani did not move. She felt like her body had turned to stone. Only her heart still moved, beating faster and faster. Sterling's eyes skimmed the first lines. He began to read, his voice low and even. The words were thick and formal at first. All the things lawyers say before they get to what people really want to know. The room seemed to grow smaller with every sentence. Imani's vision blurred at the edges. She stared not at Sterling, not at Evelyn, not at Bree, but at the window behind them. Rain had begun to tap against the glass. The lake beyond was dark and restless, its surface broken by tiny white waves. She did not know it yet, but before that rain stopped, the world she knew would be gone. And by the time the night was over, she would be on her knees on the front porch, her suitcase in a puddle, and a key to a very different life waiting for her in a town she had never seen. But that part of the story comes a little later. For now, all she could do was sit very still, listen to a stranger read her husband's last words, and hold her breath for the moment when her name would finally appear on his lips, or not at all today. Sterling cleared his throat and turned the first page. His voice had been dry a moment ago. Now it grew clearer and slower. "I will move to the main part of the will," he said. "First, to my mother, Mrs. Evelyn Coleman." Evelyn sat up a little taller. "I leave all of my shares and interest in Solaris Group, with all its assets and obligations," Sterling read. "I also leave to her full ownership of the primary home on Lakeshore Drive, including all furnishings and the household vehicles." The words hung in the air. Imani heard them. Solaris Group, the lake house, the cars. Everything Darius had built on paper now slid, in a few calm sentences, into Evelyn's hands. A small smile touched Evelyn's lips. "So the company stays with me," she said softly. "As it should." Sterling did not answer. He moved his finger down the page. "To my sister, Brianna Coleman," he went on. Bri's chin lifted. "I leave my real estate investment in downtown Chicago, a condominium on Michigan Avenue, and the savings account held in her name at First National Bank." Bree let out a small squeal. "He left me the condo," she whispered. Evelyn squeezed her hand. "He always took care of his sister," she said. Her eyes slid toward Imani. Imani felt heat rise. Her name still had not been spoken. Maybe he saved her part for last, she told herself. Maybe he wanted to end with something only for her. Sterling paused. When he looked up, his gaze brushed across Imani's face and then dropped. "And to my wife, Imani Coleman," he read, "I leave the only remaining real property from my grandfather's estate, a single-family house located in the town of Maple Creek, Indiana." The full address is attached. Silence fell heavy. In that silence, Imani heard the ticking of the hall clock and the rain on the window. A house. In some place she had never heard of. That was it. No mention of the company. No savings. No talk of wanting her to be safe. Just a house in Indiana. Sterling turned to the last page. The will also states, he said, that all of Mr. Coleman's personal cash accounts were used before his passing to meet urgent company obligations. There is no remaining balance to distribute. He stopped. The papers crinkled softly in his hands. Then Briss' laugh burst out, sharp and bright. You're kidding, she said. Mom gets Solaris in the lake house. I get downtown. And Bree jerked her chin toward Imani get some old farmhouse in the middle of nowhere? Evelyn did not tell her to be kind. She laughed too. Maple Creek, she said. It sounds like a place with a feed store and one stoplight. The sound of their laughter hit harder than the words. Imani stared at her hands. She had not expected riches. She had expected something. A note. A line that said, I did not forget you. Instead, she had a town she would need a map to find. That is all? She asked. Her voice came out thin. Sterling nodded once. That is the full distribution. Imani searched his face for any hint of a mistake. She found only tiredness and a shadow of guilt. Inside, she felt a crack run through her. Pain rushed in, hot and sharp. Underneath it came another feeling, smaller but hard. Anger. Not wild anger, but a slow, steady burn. For 5 years, she had swallowed jokes at the table, looks from guests, small cuts that came every time someone said people like you and meant not like us. She had told herself love was worth it, that Darius saw her, even if his family did not. Now, with a few strokes of a pen, she had been moved off the board. Bree leaned back. Guess he finally realized blood is thicker than water, she said. He put his real family first. Imani lifted her head. I was his family, she said. His wife. Bree rolled her eyes. You were a season. Seasons change. Sterling began to gather the papers and slide them back into his briefcase. My duties here are complete, he said quietly. I'll file the documents and send the copies to you, Mrs. Coleman. He stood, closed the case, and gave a short nod. I am sorry for your loss, he added. He walked out of the room. A moment later the front door opened and closed. The sound of his car driving away faded until there was nothing left but the rain and the breathing of 3 women who no longer shared the same world. Evelyn's smile dropped like a mask. Her face hardened. She turned to Imani. You heard him, she said. You are nobody here now. Imani blinked. Excuse me? This house is mine, Evelyn said. The business is mine. The life my son built is mine to keep. You. She looked Imani up and down. You have a house in Maple Creek. That's your place now. I lived here with Darius, Imani said. I took care of him. I buried him. That has to mean something. It meant something while he was alive, Evelyn said coldly. Now he is gone. So is your reason to be here. Bree stood up, stretching. Honestly, I don't know why we're dragging this out, she said. She came here with 1 suitcase and a couple of cheap scarves. That's all she needs to leave with. She walked toward the stairs. I'll go get it, Bree added. Imani watched her go, the back of Bree's dress moving up the steps she herself had climbed 1,000 times as a wife. You can't kick me out like I'm some stranger, Imani said. This was my home. Evelyn stepped closer. She did not shout. Her voice dropped instead. Listen carefully, she said. I let my son bring you into this house. I sat at a table with you. I even let you stand by his casket. Do not confuse my patience with weakness. You will leave this house tonight. I won't wake up tomorrow and find you still here. It's raining, Imani said. Where am I supposed to go in the middle of the night? Evelyn lifted one shoulder. To your house, she said. To Maple Creek. Pack your things. Or rather, pack the few things that are actually yours. Footsteps sounded on the stairs again. Bree dragged an old suitcase behind her, letting it bump each step. It was the same one Imani had carried up to the guest room 5 years ago. Bree let the case fall the last few inches so it landed at Imani's feet with a dull thud. A worn scarf slipped out through the broken zipper and fell onto the floor. Here you go, Bree said. Your whole life in a box. Easy move. Imani bent to pick up the scarf. It still smelled like the cheap perfume she used to wear. For a second, the memory of that early, hopeful time hurt more than anything Bree had said. She folded the scarf and laid it on top of the suitcase. Get your bag, Evelyn said. You have 10 minutes. Imani straightened. The room swam a little, then steadied. She looked at Evelyn and Bry. If she begged now, maybe Evelyn would let her stay a night or two. Maybe they would toss her a little money. No, I don't need 10 minutes, Imani said. I don't need this house. Bree snorted. Sure you don't. She walked to the front door and yanked it open. Cold air rushed in. Rain blew across the porch and onto the rugs. Bree didn't care. She grabbed the suitcase and shoved it out onto the wet stone. Out you go, she said. Evelyn moved behind Imani. Her hand landed between Imani's shoulder blades. Imani turned her head one last time, taking in the paintings and the soft light. You can keep all of it, she said quietly. I hope it keeps you warm. Evelyn's hand pushed. Imani stumbled forward onto the porch. Her shoes slid on the wet stone. In the same second, the suitcase skidded down the steps and landed in a shallow puddle. Behind her, the door slammed. The lock turned fast. Laughter rose on the other side of the wood. It was muffled by the storm but still sharp. Imani stood under the rain, soaked in seconds. Water ran down her face, mixing with the tears she no longer tried to hold back. Then she walked down the steps and pulled the suitcase out of the mud. The wheels were clogged. It would not roll smoothly anymore. She looked at the glowing windows one last time. Then she turned away from the lake house, from the life that had just spit her out, and faced the dark road. She had nothing but a wet suitcase, a hurt heart, and the deed to a house in a town called Maple Creek, Indiana. Right now, it felt like nothing. Soon, it would turn out to be everything. Imani didn't look back as she left the lake house. Rain hit her shoulders and ran down her spine, cold as ice. Her black dress clung to her legs. Her head wrap was soaked and heavy. The suitcase wheels squeaked over the sidewalk, catching on every tiny crack. Every sound seemed to say the same thing in her ears. You're out. You're on your own now. The big houses on the quiet, rich street glowed behind her with soft, golden light. Through a few tall windows she could see shapes moving in warm rooms, people setting tables, watching TV, walking through wide hallways like nothing bad had ever happened. None of that warmth was for her. At the corner, under a weak street lamp, she stopped just long enough to look for a bus sign. Cars rushed past with bright headlights and sprays of dirty water. Nobody slowed down. Nobody rolled down a window to ask why a woman was walking alone in the rain with a suitcase. Far down the cross street she spotted a small glass shelter with a blue city bus sign beside it. She tightened her grip on the suitcase handle and walked toward it, one heavy step at a time. Inside the shelter she studied the route map with shaking hands. The ink was faded and the plastic cover was scratched, but she could still see the lines. One blue route ran straight from this rich lakeside neighborhood to the central bus terminal downtown. Downtown meant long-distance buses. Long-distance buses meant leaving Chicago behind. Leaving meant going wherever that address in her purse pointed. Maple Creek, Indiana. Her fingers brushed the folded paper. Sterling Price's careful handwriting was dry and clean, so different from her smudged, wet hands. The words didn't feel like a gift. They felt like a dare from a man who was no longer here to explain himself. The bus arrived with a loud hiss of brakes. Warm, stale air washed over her as the doors opened. Imani climbed on, swiped her transit card, and watched the little screen flash. Balance. $0. Perfect, she thought. She walked to a seat near the back and sat by the window. A man in a work vest glanced up at her soaked clothes, then turned his eyes away. A girl in a hoodie didn't look up from her phone at all. No one asked what had happened. This was a city. People had their own problems. The bus pulled away from the curb. The lake house street slid out of view behind sheets of rain. Neat lawns and big porches turned into blocks of small houses, then into long rows of stores, gas stations, pawn shops, laundromats, and fast food signs. Streetlights smeared into yellow streaks on the wet glass. Imani stared out, seeing and not seeing. In her head, Sterling's voice replayed in a hard loop. To my mother, Evelyn Coleman. To my sister, Brianna Coleman. To my wife, Imani Coleman. The company, the mansion, the condo, the savings, all split neatly between Evelyn and Bree. And for her? A house in Maple Creek, Indiana. Nothing more. Nothing less. Was it a punishment? A joke? A cold way to say, I regret you? Or was there something else she didn't know yet? Her chest tightened. She pressed her lips together and turned her eyes back to the window so the other riders wouldn't see the shine in them. The central bus terminal was bright, loud, and exhausted. People slumped on plastic chairs with bags at their feet. A toddler cried while his mother bounced him on her hip. A man snored across 3 seats with his coat over his head. Loudspeakers called out cities and gate numbers in a flat voice that sounded tired too. The air smelled like coffee, fried food, and wet coats that were never fully dry. Imani dragged her suitcase across the worn floor. One wheel stuck in a crack and scraped loudly when she yanked it free. She kept walking, following the big digital boards hanging above the ticket counters. Milwaukee, Detroit, Indianapolis, St. Louis. Her eyes moved down to the section marked Indiana. Under one row of times and cities, a smaller gray note blinked. Connection to rural junction stop. That had to be it. She stepped up to that counter. The clerk was an older man with deep lines around his mouth and a bus company jacket zipped to his chin. He didn't look unkind or unkind. Just tired. Where you headed? He asked. Maple Creek, Indiana, Imani said. Saying it out loud made the place feel both more real and more like something from a storybook. He typed for a moment, then shook his head. Bus doesn't go all the way in, he said. Closest we get is a junction on Route 12. Town's about 3 miles from there. You'll have to walk or catch a local ride. 3 miles. In the dark. After the week Shed just had. With a suitcase that already complained at every step. How much to the junction? She asked. He named the price. It was more than she wanted but less than she feared. She opened her wallet. The thin stack of bills inside had once felt like spare money for flowers and extra food after the funeral. Tonight it was almost everything she had. She slid most of the bills under the glass. He handed her a printed ticket and circled a line on it. Gate 9, he said. Leaves in 20 minutes. He paused, studying her wet clothes and tired eyes. You sure you'll be okay out there, ma'am? I'll manage, she said. It sounded half like a lie, half like a promise she had no choice but to keep. The bus to Indiana was older than the city bus. The seats sagged in the middle. The patterned fabric was faded and shiny from years of use. The air smelled like diesel and old coffee. A few riders were already spread out through the rows. A young couple with a sleeping baby. A man in a hoodie with his cap pulled low. A woman with 2 big bags and dark circles under her eyes. Imani found a seat by the window and set the suitcase at her feet. When the driver shut the door and pulled away from the gate, the bright station lights dropped behind them. The highway opened up ahead, black and shining with rain. City lights thinned fast. Tall buildings turned into low ones, then into small clumps of lamps at exits. Gas stations and truck stops glowed like lonely islands in the dark. After a while, there were long stretches of nothing at all. With nothing to watch, her thoughts went backward. She saw Darius in a hospital bed, skin a shade too pale, 4 taped to his arm. The room had smelled like antiseptic and lemon cleaner. Machines had beeped softly beside him. His eyes were tired but sharp that evening when he asked Evelyn and Bree to go get coffee. If I ever do something that doesn't make sense, he had said quietly, promise you'll trust me for a little while. Shed tried to joke. That sounds like trouble, Shed told him. What are you planning, Darius? Head smiled without quite looking at her. Probably something stupid, Head said. But he'll try to make it the kind of stupid that keeps you safe. Back then, she had laughed and squeezed his hand, never thinking those words would follow her onto a midnight bus. Now, in the dark, they didn't feel funny at all. They felt heavy, like a small stone sitting in her chest. Is this it, Darius? She whispered, resting her forehead against the cool glass. Sending me away to some broken house in a town I've never seen? The bus didn't answer. It just hummed and rattled, carrying her farther and farther from everything she knew. Her eyes burned. She had cried so much this past week she thought there was nothing left. Still, a few tears slid down anyway, warm against her cold skin. She let them fall. There was no Evelyn here to stare. No Bree to roll her eyes. No guests to pretend for. After a while, the steady rocking of the bus pulled her into a thin, broken sleep. She woke to the driver's voice echoing down the aisle. Junction, stop, Maple Creek Road. Her neck hurt from sleeping at a strange angle. Her mouth was dry, but her mind snapped awake. She grabbed her purse, yanked up the suitcase handle, and made her way to the front as the bus slowed. Cold air rushed in when the doors opened. She stepped down onto rough gravel. The junction was nothing more than a wide patch beside the highway under a single buzzing street lamp. Across the road sat a low building with a faded sign. Green's General Store. One front window glowed. Behind it, dark fields stretched out under a pale strip of early morning sky. The bus doors folded shut. The red tail lights shrank and faded as the bus rolled back onto the highway. In a few seconds, the sound of the engine was gone too. Silence and wind took its place. A door creaked. A man in jeans and a flannel shirt stepped out of the store, keys in one hand, coffee mug in the other. Gray showed at his temples. "You off the Chicago bus?" he called. "Yes, sir," Imani said. "Heading to Maple Creek?" he asked. "Yes. There's a house there," she answered. Her fingers shook as she unfolded the paper and read him the address. He nodded. "I know that one," he said. "Big old place at the very end of town. Been empty so long folks call it the haunted house." Haunted house? Of course, she thought. Evelyn had the lake. Bree had the city lights. She had ghosts. "How far?" she asked. 3 miles straight down that road," he said, pointing to a narrow lane beside the store. "You'll see the Welcome to Maple Creek sign. Keep going till the pavement ends. Otis Green, if you ever need the store." "Thank you, Mr. Green," Imani said. "You want a coffee before you start?" he offered. And putting a pot on, her whole body wanted to say yes, but she knew if she sat down now, her legs might never stand back up. "I should go while I still can," she said, trying to smile. "But thank you. That's kind." He nodded and went back inside. A small lamp over his door clicked on, throwing a little extra light on the start of the lane. Imani turned toward it and began to walk. The side road was packed dirt. The top layer turned to slick mud by the rain. On her third step, the suitcase wheel sank and stuck. She had to yank hard to pull it free. It happened again and again until her hands burned. Fields of tall corn rose on both sides, dark shapes whispering in the wind. No cars passed. No streetlights showed ahead. The gray line of the sky slowly brightened, but the road stayed lonely. Step, pull, breathe. Step, pull, breathe. Her shoulders ached. Her legs felt like they were made of wood. Once the suitcase hit a stone buried in the mud and jerked sideways so sharply she almost fell. She caught herself and kept moving. Somewhere between the highway and town, she stopped thinking in words. There was only the sound of her breath, the squish of her shoes, and the drag of the suitcase behind her. By the time an arch marked Welcome to Maple Creek, her legs shook. At the road's end a ruined house waited. She sank by its gate, whispering, "This feels like bottom," not knowing it wasn't. Imani sat in the wet grass until her legs went numb. Her back burned from the long walk. Mud clung to her dress. Her head wrap sagged, heavy with rain. Beside the crooked gate, her suitcase lay on its side like it had given up before she did. In front of her, the house Darius had left her leaned toward the road. The paint was almost gone, hanging in long strips. The wood under it was gray and swollen. Weeds filled the yard, tall and wild. One upstairs window was broken, a black hole staring down at her. "If this is all I'm worth," she whispered, "you might as well have left me nothing." Her voice disappeared into the cold morning. Maple Creek was quiet. No passing cars, no horns, no city hum. Just wind in the corn, a dog barking far away, and the sound of her own tired breath. Evelyn had the lake house and the company. Bree had the downtown condo. They still had money, staff, invitations, polite smiles. Imani had a ruin at the edge of a town she hadn't known existed a day ago. For a moment, a dark, soft thought settled on her shoulders. Maybe this was where she stopped. Stopped trying to prove herself. Stopped hoping anyone would ever choose her again. Just let the world move on without her. A tear dropped from her chin onto a bent weed. Something white near the porch made her blink. She looked up. At first, it was just a pale patch in all the green. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and looked again. In the corner of the sagging porch sat a small clay pot. It was cracked down one side, but still in one piece. A green plant spilled over the edge, full of tiny, star-shaped white flowers. Even from where she sat, she knew that smell. Jasmine, soft and sweet. The scent drifted over the yard and reached her. It didn't fit the place. It was the smell of candles in fancy stores and clean rooms with big windows, not a dying house in a small town. Her mind jumped back to a night on the couch at the lake house. A movie played about a couple who lost everything and ended up in a shack. Darius had laughed and pulled her closer. "If we ever end up broke in some shack," Head said, I'll hide the key to our secret life under a jasmine pot. Nobody ever looks under plants. She had tossed a pillow at him and told him he watched too many spy movies. They had both laughed and never talked about it again. Now she sat in front of something very close to a shack. And there, on a porch that looked ready to fall, sat a jasmine pot. Something small and hard moved under her ribs. Not quite hope, not quite fear. A tight knot of both. "That's crazy," she said out loud. "It's just a plant." Her body didn't listen. She pushed herself up, legs shaking, and grabbed the rusty gate. It squealed as she forced it open. The tall grass scratched her ankles as she walked through. She dragged the suitcase behind her, up the cracked steps, until she reached the pot. Up close, the jasmine looked even more out of place. The leaves were glossy and deep green. The petals were bright white, with clear drops of water still sitting on them. Someone had taken care of it. Imani knelt beside it. For a few seconds she just breathed, letting the scent push back every other smell. "Okay," she whispered. "If you're nothing, fine. If you're something, then show me." She wrapped both hands around the pot and slid it to the side. Dry dirt sprinkled the porch. At first she saw only wood and dust. Then, in the thin gap between two boards, something dull and gold caught the light. Her breath caught in her throat. She brushed the dirt aside with her fingers. A brass key lay in the crack, old and heavy, with a round top and long teeth. A sound came out of her, half laugh, half sob. "Darius," she breathed. "What did you do?" She picked up the key. It was cold in her palm, then warmed quickly as if it had been waiting there for her all along. Her eyes went to the front door. A thick iron padlock hung from a metal loop. Rust streaked down from it. "This is insane," she told herself quietly. But so is everything else this week. She stepped up, pushed the key into the lock, and turned. For a second, nothing happened. Then metal scraped, and with a harsh clank, the lock sprang open. Her heart jumped. She pulled the lock free and let it hang from her fingers. The door groaned when she pushed it inward. A wave of cold, stale air rolled over her, full of dust and the faint sour smell of old wood and damp walls. She covered her mouth and nose with her sleeve and took a small step inside. The front hall was wide but dim. Pieces of furniture stood along the walls under gray, sagging sheets. Cobwebs hung from the corners. Every step made the floor complain. Imani pulled out her phone and turned on the flashlight. The small beam cut through the gloom in a narrow line. Under the dust and dampness, another smell floated up. Dry paper, a hint of tobacco smoke. The exact smell that had clung to Darius' home office back in Chicago, when he stayed up too late reading contracts and pretending he wasn't tired. She followed it. Down the hall, on the left, one door looked slightly different. The wood was less worn. The handle was brighter, as if touched more often. Her fingers tightened around the key, though she didn't need it for this one. She turned the knob and pushed. It was a study. Dust lay on the surfaces, but the room itself was neat. A large wooden desk faced a dirty window. A leather office chair stood behind it. One wall was covered in shelves full of binders and file boxes. On the desk sat an empty glass and an ashtray with a few dry crumbs of tobacco. Someone had been here, recently enough that the room still felt used. "You were here," she said into the quiet. "While I thought you were at treatment, you were here." She turned slowly, letting the flashlight sweep over the walls. Her light stopped on a painting. It hung straight across from the desk. In a room full of brown and gray, it glowed with deep blue and gold. It showed a wide river at night and a stone bridge lined with tall lamps. Their light shone on the dark water. Behind them, buildings rose under a soft sky. Paris. She had seen that bridge on a travel show they watched when Darius couldn't sleep. In pictures online. In movies. Pont Alexandre III. The host had called it the most beautiful bridge in Paris. "Someday I'll take you there," Darius had said, resting his hand on hers. "Well, stand on that bridge and it will feel like we belong." She had laughed and told him 2 kids from Chicago didn't belong in Paris. He had only smiled. "Trust me," had said. Now the same bridge looked down at her from a wall in Maple Creek, Indiana. Imani stepped closer and touched the frame. It was smooth and heavy under her fingers. On a sudden thought, she pushed at one side. Nothing. She pushed at the other. Still nothing. She almost let go, feeling silly even alone. Then she curled her fingers under the bottom edge and lifted just a little. A soft click answered her. The painting swung forward like a small door. Behind it, set into the wall, was a metal safe. A small digital keypad glowed faint green in her phone light. Imani stared at it. Jasmine on the porch. A key under the pot. A hidden study. A Paris bridge on the wall. Now this. None of it was an accident. Her fingers hovered over the keypad. She typed in, Darius' birthday. A sharp beep. A red light blinked. Wrong. She tried her own birthday. Another beep. Another red flash. Her throat felt tight. What else was big to you? She whispered. Her mind slid through memories until it landed on one that made her chest ache and warm at the same time. Their wedding day. Her hands shook as she entered the numbers. This time the safe gave a long, low tone. The red light went out. A green one turned on. Inside the wall, she heard bolts slide back. Imani wrapped her hand around the handle and pulled. The metal door opened slowly. There were no stacks of money inside. No gold bars. No thick folders of papers. Only 3 things sat on the small shelf. A bottle of water, a pack of whole-grain crackers, and a thin brown envelope. Her heart dropped, then rose again. She took the envelope. On the front, in Darius' hand, was her name. She tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, not a letter. A plane ticket. First class. Chicago O'Hare to Paris. Charles de Gaulle. Passenger. Imani Coleman. Departure time. Tomorrow morning. 6:30 a.m. On her phone, in the corner of the screen, the battery icon blinked red. Imani sank into the leather chair behind the desk, the ticket trembling between her fingers. If this is a trap, she whispered into the dusty air, then it's the most expensive trap you ever set, Darius. Fear sat heavy in her chest. Anger burned under it. But under both, very deep down, something small and bright began to glow. For the first time since the will was read, it felt like maybe, just maybe, this was not the end of her story. The ticket shook in Imani's hands. She read it twice, 3 times. First class, Chicago to Paris. Her name. Tomorrow, 6:30 a.m. Paris, she said into the dusty study. The word did not match the rotting house in Maple Creek. It sounded like it belonged to someone else. Her phone buzzed. The battery bar was almost gone. A new message appeared from a number with plus 33 inches front. France. She opened it. Your husband asked me to make sure of this. Do not bring anything except your ID and passport. Your ticket is in the safe behind the bridge painting. The code is your wedding date. We will be waiting for you in Paris. Her throat went tight. Whoever sent it knew about the painting. The safe. The code. They knew she was here. They knew what Darius had done. Imani set the phone down before her, shaking hand dropped it. She pressed her palms flat on the desk. You watched them throw me out, she whispered. You let your mother laugh at me. You let your sister call me nothing. And all this time, you had this plan. Anger burned in her chest. But under it, another feeling slowly rose. It felt like the first thin beam of sun through heavy clouds. Darius had always done things with a reason. Even when she did not like his choices, he did not move by accident. You wanted me out of that house, she said, far away, before something worse happened. Her stomach growled. The sound was loud in the quiet room. She looked at the bottle of water and the small pack of crackers in the safe, and almost smiled. No gold bars, she said. Just snacks. She put the water and crackers in her bag along with her ID and old passport. She was suddenly grateful she had never taken the passport out of her suitcase after their last trip, that it had just stayed there waiting. Her eyes went to the suitcase in the middle of the floor. Mud clung to the wheels. The zipper was broken. Inside were dresses, scarves, pieces of the life she had tried to build in Evelyn's house. The text replayed in her mind. Do not bring anything except your ID and passport. She walked to the suitcase. For a moment she held the handle. It felt like the last link to the life she had just lost. She let it fall. I'm done dragging that house behind me, she said softly. If I go with what is mine, not what they gave me. She checked the time on her phone. The battery bar was a thin red line. Dawn was still a while away, but the first bus back toward the city would not wait for her. Imani left the study, walked down the hall, and stepped out onto the porch. She pulled the front door of the Maple Creek house closed. This time she left the padlock open on purpose. Cold air hit her face. The rain had stopped, but the world was still wet and shining. A faint gray light touched the fields. She wrapped her coat tight and started back down the muddy lane toward the junction. Her shoes sank into soft earth. Each step made a small, sucking sound. At least her hands were free. Halfway down, headlights cut the dim light. A pickup truck rolled toward her and slowed. The window slid down. Mr. Green leaned out, cap low on his forehead. "Morning," he called. "Thought that might be you. House not much of a welcome, huh?" "Something like that," Imani said. "Where you heading?" he asked. "Back to the depot," she said. "I need the first bus to Chicago." "Hop in," he said. "Road's too mean for walking twice." She climbed in. The truck smelled like coffee and motor oil. Warm air blew from the vents. "You find what you needed?" he asked, as they bumped over potholes. "I found enough to know I can't stay," she said. He nodded like that was answer enough. At the depot, she tried to pay him with the last crumpled bills in her wallet. He pushed her hand back. "Keep it," he said. "City's expensive. You'll need it more than I do." "Thank you," Imani said. "For the ride. For not asking too many questions. Folks who look like you do now," he said gently, got their hands full already. The morning bus to Chicago was almost full. People in work coats and backpacks swayed in the aisles. A baby cried once and then fell asleep on his mother's shoulder. Imani found a window seat. Maple Creek slid away behind them, then the fields, then the flat gray line of the highway. Her body ached, but a thin wire of energy held her upright. The ruined house, the jasmine, the key, the study, the bridge painting, the safe, the ticket, the text. Each memory clicked into place like pieces of a pattern. She still did not see the whole picture, but she knew one thing for sure. Darius had not forgotten her. At the city station she followed the crowd out, then turned toward the train signs for O'Hare. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The smell of coffee and fried food wrapped around her. On the train, she clutched the pole with one hand and held her bag tight with the other. The car rattled and shook as it sped under the streets. Each time the doors opened, new faces came in. Sleepy, rushed, bored. Her phone warmed her hip through her pocket. She did not take it out now. She could feel the last bit of battery like a small heartbeat and did not want to waste it. If the phone dies, the ticket is still real, she told herself. Paper doesn't need power. But the message from France would vanish. The proof that someone was waiting at the other end would go dark. "You'll have to be enough," she told herself instead. "You, and the man you chose." The train rose out of the dark and into sunlight. Soon they were passing parking lots, hotels, and stretches of fence. Planes rose and fell in the distance. At O'Hare, she followed signs to the main hall. The space was huge, all glass and steel. Screens flashed city names in bright letters. Announcements echoed across the high ceiling. She found her flight on the board. Chicago, Paris CDG. On time. Her heart clenched. Despite everything, a tiny part of her had expected to see canceled. She walked to her airline's check-in area. The line at the first-class counter was short. The carpet under her feet suddenly felt too soft for her muddy shoes. A woman behind the desk smiled as Imani stepped up, then looked quickly at her clothes and head wrap. "Good morning," the woman said. "Where are you flying today?" "Paris," Imani said. "I need to check in." She handed over her passport and the printed ticket from the safe. The agent scanned them. Her smile faded a little as she read her screen. "This is a first-class, one-way ticket," she said. "And I see no checked bags. Is that right?" "Yes," Imani said. "Just this bag." The woman's gaze flicked from the screen to Imani's face. Doubt flickered there. Imani had seen that look too many times at other counters, in other offices. "I'm going to have my supervisor review this quickly," the agent said. Just to confirm. A man in a darker suit arrived. He took the passport and ticket, studied them, then looked at Imani. "Mrs. Coleman?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "We've checked your reservation," he said. "It is valid and fully paid. We do not often see one-way first-class tickets with no luggage. I just needed to be sure there was no mistake. My husband set it up," she said, "before he died." His expression softened at once. "I'm very sorry," he said quietly. "Well, take good care of you on your trip." He nodded to the agent. The printer hummed. A boarding pass slid out. "Gate B12, the woman said, handing it over. "Boarding in about 40 minutes. You also have access to our lounge. Just show them this pass." "Thank you," Imani said. She moved through security on shaky legs. Shoes off. Bag in a bin. Arms up. Step through. For once, nothing beeped. She almost laughed. Inside the terminal, she found the lounge and held out her pass. The woman at the desk scanned it and smiled. Welcome, she said. Food is to your left. Seating to your right. Imani went straight to the restroom. In the mirror, she saw dark circles under her eyes, a trace of dried mud on her hem, and a new set to her jaw she had never noticed before. She washed her face and hands. She fixed her head wrap. She did not become a different person in that bright bathroom, but she stood up a little straighter when she walked out. An announcement sounded. Now boarding, Flight 218 to Paris, at Gate B12. Her fingers tightened on the strap of her bag. This is it, she whispered. At the gate, the first-class line was short. When she reached the front, the agent scanned her pass. Have a wonderful flight, Mrs. Coleman, the woman said. Wonderful. Imani wasn't sure about that, but at least it would be a flight. She walked down the jet bridge. The air grew cooler. The smell of fuel and metal wrapped around her. At the door of the plane, a flight attendant smiled. Welcome aboard, she said. First class to your left. Imani turned left. The cabin felt like another world. Wide seats, soft lights, pillows stacked neatly. No one was shoved too close to anyone else. She found seat 2A and sat down slowly. The cushion held her weight like it had been waiting. Can I offer you something to drink? A flight attendant asked. Water, juice, champagne? Water, Imani said. She held the glass in both hands for a moment before taking a sip. The cool water washed the taste of bus stations and fear from her mouth. Outside, the plane began to move. Runway lights slid past faster and faster. The engines roared. Her stomach dipped as the plane lifted. Imani watched the city shrink through the small window. Streets turned into thin lines. Houses and cars became small dots. Goodbye, Chicago, she murmured. Goodbye to the girl who had to beg to stay. Clouds covered the view. The seatbelt sign glowed overhead. She leaned back and let herself breathe. She did not know what waited in Paris. She did not know who had sent the message or what we meant. She only knew that she was not running away from a closed door anymore. For the first time since the will was read, a tiny, stubborn thought sat beside her fear. Maybe, she thought, Darius had loved her enough to let her fall so that he could show her she knew how to rise. When the plane landed, Imani woke with a jolt. Her neck hurt, her eyes were dry. For a second, she did not know where she was. Then the captain's voice came over the speakers. Welcome to Paris, he said. Local time is 7:45 in the morning. Paris. Yesterday she had stood in the rain outside the lake house. Last night she had walked a muddy road to a broken home in Maple Creek. Now she sat in a soft first-class seat above France. Her hand flew to her pocket. The paper ticket was there. The message from the French number burned in her mind. We are waiting for you. People unbuckled and reached for bags. Imani had only her small shoulder bag. That made her one of the first in the aisle. She stepped into the jet bridge. The air felt colder, like metal and rain. She followed signs for arrivals. At passport control, a man in a dark blue shirt took her passport. How long will you stay in France? He asked. I'm not sure yet, she said. He studied her face, then stamped the page. Bienvenue, he said. Welcome. She walked past baggage claim without stopping. Around her, people grabbed large suitcases. Her fingers twitched, missing the handle of a bag. But the suitcase she had dragged through mud was sitting in an empty study in Indiana. She had left it behind on purpose. The glass doors to the arrivals hall slid open. Noise hit her. Voices in French and English. Wheels rolling. Babies crying. People laughing as they hugged family. A long line of drivers and hotel staff held signs with names. Imani slowed. Her eyes moved from one sign to the next. Thompson. Perez. Kim. Brown. No Coleman. Her throat tightened. Her fingers dug into the strap of her bag. What if no one is here? She thought. What if that message was some sick joke? Then she saw it. At the far end stood a tall man in a dark coat. His silver hair was neat. His shoes shone. In his hands was a black folder. On the front, gold letters spelled MRS. Imani Coleman. He lifted his head and met her eyes. No big smile, no fake charm. Just a small, Real nod, like, there you are. Imani walked toward him. Imani, she said. Imani Coleman. The man inclined his head. Mrs. Coleman, he said. My name is Sterling Price. I handled Mr. Darius Coleman's affairs here in Europe. Imani had heard that name before. On phone calls. In quiet talks, Darius had once cut short when Evelyn came into the room. You sent the text, she said. I made sure it reached you, he said. But the plan was his. Almost all of this was his. The word plan pressed hard against her ribs. He took her bag, but not in a rough way. He held it like it was something valuable. Then he gestured toward the doors. If you will come with me, the car is outside, he said. We can talk on the drive. Outside, the air was colder. A long black car stood near the curb. A driver in a cap opened the back door. It felt like a scene from some other woman's life. Yesterday, she had begged a cab driver in Chicago for a ride with almost no money. Now a driver in gloves held a door and waited. She slid into the car. The seat was soft leather. The city moved past the window once they pulled away from the curb. At first, she saw gray buildings and overpasses. Then the view shifted to narrow streets lined with tall stone houses, small bakeries, cafes with metal chairs stacked outside. A woman on a bike pedaled past with a loaf of bread in her basket. Imani watched in silence. I know this is overwhelming, Sterling said at last, so I will keep it simple. What your mother-in-law and sister-in-law received back in Chicago is not what your husband counted as your true inheritance. They got the house, Imani said. They got the company. It looked pretty real from where I was sitting. Yes, he said. On paper, Solaris Group in Chicago looked like the crown jewel. But years ago, Darius began moving the real money, real assets, into a different place. A holding company here. DL Global Holdings. She remembered that name on a file once, before Darius slid it away. DL Global, she repeated. He called it your fortress, Sterling said. Not in front of his family, of course. But when we worked together, that is what he said. He made himself only a manager there. He made you the owner. The legal documents name you as the one in control now. Owner. Fortress. Control. The words felt too big. They did not match the woman who had been kicked into the rain. How can I own something I never heard of? She asked. Because he planned to tell you himself, Sterling said. He thought he had more time. When he saw that he did not, he set up this way for you to find it after he was gone. Imani looked down at her hands. They were still a little swollen from the long flight. There was mud under one nail she had missed in the airport sink. Why didn't he say anything in that will? She asked. Why hand his mother and sister the pretty parts and let them treat me like trash in front of everyone? He could have left them less. He could have left me some small piece. Anything. Sterling's face stayed calm, but his eyes were kind. Because if they had known you were tied to something bigger, they would never have let you walk away, he said. They would have chased you. They would have watched you, followed you, maybe tried to use you to get to DL Global. He needed them to believe you were empty-handed. Evelyn's cruel giggle came back to Imani's ears. Briss bright, ugly joy as she threw the suitcase into the puddle. Imani breathed in and out, slowly, until her chest hurt less. So he let them be monsters, she said. So their own greed would set me free. Sterling did not say yes. He did not have to. The car turned onto a wide road that ran beside a river. Stone walls rose between the road and the water. On a curve ahead, a bridge crossed over. Tall lamps lined its sides. Gold decorations shone dull in the gray light. Imani's heart jumped. She had seen that bridge before, in a painting hidden behind a safe, on a screen in a travel show. In Darius' eyes when he had said, "Someday, is that the same?" She began. Pont Alexandra III, Sterling said. He picked an apartment with this view on purpose. The car slowed in front of a glass building. Inside, the lobby was quiet, polished stone and soft light. A man at the desk nodded at Sterling and pressed a button. In the elevator, no floor buttons showed. Sterling swiped a card. The doors closed. When they opened again, there was no hallway. There was a living room. Wall-to-wall windows showed the river and the bridge like a painting come to life. The city stretched on both sides, gray roofs and white stone and small dots of color where people moved. Imani stepped out as if she were afraid the floor might vanish. "What is this place?" she asked. "The top floor is one home," Sterling said. "You're home now." Darius bought this penthouse 6 months ago. The deed is in your name. She walked to the window. Her fingers touched the glass. The bridge looked close enough to walk to. While I was changing bandages and cooking soup, she said. He was buying this. He was doing both, Sterling said gently. He was trying to stay alive. And preparing for the day. He didn't. Her eyes burned again. She blinked quickly. There is one more thing you should see, he said. Then I will leave you to rest. You have crossed an ocean in less than a day. Your body and your heart are both tired. He guided her into a side room. A desk stood near another window. On it sat an open laptop. Its screen was dark, but a small light showed it was on. Sterling touched the touchpad. The picture came up at once. There was a single video file in the center. He recorded this a few weeks before he died, Sterling said. He told me not to play it for anyone but you. When you are ready, press play. I will come back later. He moved toward the door, then paused. In the bedroom, you will find clothes, shoes, small things. He chose them himself. I believe he wanted you to feel expected. Then he left her alone. Imani sat down slowly in the chair. Her finger hovered over the trackpad. She clicked. The picture shook for a moment, then steadied. Darius sat on a simple chair in what looked like a hotel room. A city street glowed in the window behind him. His face was thinner. There were dark circles under his eyes. But when he looked into the camera, she saw the man she knew. Hey, Imani, he said. His voice was rough and soft at the same time. If you're watching this, that means the crazy plan worked. You found the house. You found the key. You made it across the ocean. Not there with you. Sorry for that. Her throat closed. I know you're mad at me, he went on. You have every right. You sat there, while that will was read. You heard my mother and Bree get the shiny things. You heard your name come with a broken house in a town you never heard of. You watched them laugh at you. You watched them throw you out. And I let it happen. He leaned closer. I need you to understand something, he said. I didn't do that because I stopped loving you. I did it because I knew exactly how much they hate losing. If they thought you had anything worth fighting over, they would have gone after you with everything they had. Court, gossip, lies. They would have tried to break you in every way. I couldn't leave you in that fight. He took a slow breath, then went on. So I did something that probably made you hate me instead, he said. I let them think I picked them over you. I gave them a company full of debt and a house tied to it. I knew they would grab it. At the same time, I built you something they could not touch. DL Global, the place where the real value lives. That is yours, not theirs. Tears slid down Imana's face now. She did not bother to wipe them away. I'm sorry it had to hurt this much, he whispered. If there had been a kind way to do this, I promise I would have found it. I ran out of time and options. The only thing I did not run out of was love for you. He gave a crooked smile. Live, Imani, he said. Not small. Not hiding. Live like this life is really yours. Use what I left you to stand up straight in any room. And if, one day, you find yourself laughing with someone else, that's okay. I want you to be happy, even if I'm not there to see it. He looked into the camera one last time. I love you, he said. Always. The screen went black. Imani sat very still. Then the tears came harder, pulled up from somewhere deep. Grief, anger, relief, and a strange sharp gratitude all mixed until she could not tell one from the other. When the storm inside her finally eased, she stood. She walked back to the big window. The bridge lights flickered on as the sky shifted. Cars crossed back and forth. Life moved. She put her hand flat on the glass. Okay, Darius, she said softly. You built the fortress. He'll learn how to live in it. He'll learn how to be more than the woman they threw out. For the first time since the funeral, when she looked toward the future, she did not see only a closed door. She saw a road. Hard, long, but open, and she felt, in some small new place inside her, that maybe she could walk it. Back in Chicago, the lake house glittered for a while. A few days after the will was read, Evelyn and Bree moved through the rooms like queens. Workers came and went. Curtains changed, walls got new paint, flowers filled every table. The only things that disappeared were photos of Darius with Imani. Can you believe it? Bree said, turning in front of a mirror. My own condo, my own money. Finally. Your brother fixed his mistake, Evelyn said, lifting her tea. He put his real family first. By mistake, she meant Imani. People whispered in private about the widow, who had been left almost nothing and seen walking away in the rain. Some called it cruel. Some called it smart. But when they visited the lake house, they smiled at Evelyn and told her how strong she was. Evelyn liked that word. Strong. To show everyone how strong and secure she was now, she planned a party. Make it big, she told the planner. No one in our circle should miss it. On the night of the party, the house glowed. Cars lined the drive. Music floated through open doors. Guests in suits and gowns wandered with drinks in their hands. Bree laughed with a group near the bar. Owning a condo is so stressful, she joked. Too many choices. But it'll survive. Evelyn stood by the fireplace in a deep red dress, diamonds at her ears. Any hint of grief was buried under powder and polish. After a while, she tapped her glass with a spoon. "Friends," she called as the music softened. "Thank you for being here. This has been a hard season. But from loss, a new chapter has begun. Solaris is in my hands now. The house is mine to keep. The Coleman name is secure." She paused. "And as for the past," she added, "we have let go of what did not belong. Some people are simply not meant to stay." A few guests shifted, but most raised their glasses. Then the doorbell rang. Not a soft chime. 3 hard presses, one after another. Evelyn frowned. "Who thinks they can interrupt my toast?" she said. The guard went to answer. Music faded on its own as voices carried down the hall. Footsteps followed. A group of people in dark suits walked into the living room. No evening clothes, no smiles. One man at the front held a thick folder. "This is a private event," Evelyn said. "You are not invited." "Mrs. Evelyn Coleman?" the man asked. "Yes," she said. "Owner of Solaris Group and this home." "My name is Calvin Brooks," he said. "I represent a group of banks that loaned money to Solaris Group. We're here under a court order." A chill slid through the room. "There must be some mistake," Evelyn said. "Solaris is strong. We have this house, a condo, cars." Calvin opened his folder. "Solaris has missed several large payments," he said. "Those loans came due this week. Notices were sent. None were answered. The company is in default." These papers showed this house, the downtown condo, and several vehicles were used as collateral. "There is not enough cash to cover what is owed. We are here to seize the collateral." The word seize made the air heavy. Bri's voice came out thin. "You can't take our things," she said. "My brother was rich. He left us everything." "He left you everything tied to this debt," Calvin said. "He moved other assets years ago. They are not part of Solaris anymore." Around them, his team moved through the house, sticking bright tags on furniture, paintings, the big TV, even the piano. Another headed toward the garage. "You have 30 minutes, one told Evelyn quietly. "You may pack personal clothing and small items. After that, this property will be locked." "You can't do this," Evelyn snapped. "This is my home." "It was the bank's security," Calvin said. "Now it belongs to the bank." Bree ran for the garage. Outside, the whine of a tow truck rose. By the time she reached the driveway, her sleek car was already halfway onto the truck. "Stop! That's mine!" she shouted. "It's owned by Solaris," the worker answered. Some guests watched from the doorway, phones half raised. The party feeling was gone, leaving only cold air and the smell of fear. When the 30 minutes were up, the last guests slipped away. The bank's guards walked Evelyn and Bree to the front step. Evelyn held a small handbag. Bree clutched a shoebox of jewelry. Behind them, lights went out room by room. The big door closed with a heavy sound. A lock turned. 7 days earlier, Evelyn had shoved Imani into the rain with a suitcase. Now she sat on her own cold step in an expensive gown, with no keys and nowhere to go. At almost the same time, far away in Paris, a different room was emptying. High above the Seine, in a boardroom, people in suits closed laptops and stacked papers. Charts still glowed on a screen at the far end. At the head of the table sat Imani. She wore a navy suit and a soft cream scarf. Her eyes were clear, focused. Months of long days had changed her. The hurt was still there, but it no longer ruled her. "So, we agree," she said. "We keep the renewable energy project in Southeast Asia, but with the tighter limits we discussed. We're not here for a quick gain. We're here to build something that lasts." Several directors nodded. "Thank you, everyone," Imani said. "DL Global is my responsibility now. I intend to treat it that way." Chairs slid back. One by one, the directors left. When the door closed behind the last of them, the room fell quiet. Evening light turned the river outside to a band of dull gold. You handle them well, Sterling said. You don't try to sound like Darius. You sound like yourself. That is better. I still hear other voices in my head, Imani said. Sometimes his. Sometimes Evelyn's. What does Evelyn's voice say? He asked. That I don't belong here, she said. That I should be grateful for scraps and stay quiet in the back of the room. And what do you say back now? He asked. She looked out at the bridge Darius had once pointed to on a screen. I remind myself whose name is on the papers, she said. He didn't make me a guest. He made me the owner. Her laptop chimed. A new email popped up. Subject: Final report, Chicago. She paused, then clicked. A short file opened. One by one, the directors left. When the door closed behind the last of them, the room fell quiet. Evening light turned the river outside to a band of dull gold. You handle them well, Sterling said. You don't try to sound like Darius. You sound like yourself. That is better. I still hear other voices in my head, Imani said. Sometimes his. Sometimes Evelyn's. What does Evelyn's voice say? He asked. That I don't belong here, she said. That I should be grateful for scraps and stay quiet in the back of the room. And what do you say back now? He asked. She looked out at the bridge Darius had once pointed to on a screen. I remind myself whose name is on the papers, she said. He didn't make me a guest. He made me the owner. Her laptop chimed. A new email popped up. Subject: Final report, Chicago. She paused, then clicked. A short file opened. Photos showed a small rental house with peeling paint. In one, Evelyn sat on a worn couch, hair dull, eyes tired. In another, Bree stood in a narrow kitchen, mouth open mid-argument. A note from the investigator said they fought often, that friends had stopped answering calls, that cards were declined, that no one would lend them money. Imani closed the message. I thought I'd feel happy, she said quietly. Or at least, finished. And? Sterling asked. And I mostly feel nothing, she said. They chose how to treat me. They chose what to grab. This is just where that road led. For the first time, she added, their lives don't control mine. That's enough. Outside, the bridge lights flicked on. Paris slipped from late afternoon into night. Back in Chicago, the lake house glittered for a while. A few days after the will was read, Evelyn and Bree moved through the rooms like queens. Workers came and went. Curtains changed, walls got new paint, flowers filled every table. The only things that disappeared were photos of Darius with Imani. Can you believe it? Bree said, turning in front of a mirror. My own condo, my own money. Finally. Your brother fixed his mistake, Evelyn said, lifting her tea. He put his real family first. By mistake, she meant Imani. People whispered in private about the widow who had been left almost nothing and seen walking away in the rain. Some called it cruel. Some called it smart. But when they visited the lake house, they smiled at Evelyn and told her how strong she was. Evelyn liked that word. Strong. To show everyone how strong and secure she was now, she planned a party. Make it big, she told the planner. No one in our circle should miss it. On the night of the party, the house glowed. Cars lined the drive. Music floated through open doors. Guests in suits and gowns wandered with drinks in their hands. Bri laughed with a group near the bar. Owning a condo is so stressful, she joked. Too many choices, but it'll survive. Evelyn stood by the fireplace in a deep red dress, diamonds at her ears. Any hint of grief was buried under powder and polish. After a while, she tapped her glass with a spoon. Friends, she called as the music softened. Thank you for being here. This has been a hard season, but from loss, a new chapter has begun. Solaris is in my hands now. The house is mine to keep. The Coleman name is secure. She paused. And as for the past, she added, we have let go of what did not belong. Some people are simply not meant to stay. A few guests shifted, but most raised their glasses. Then the doorbell rang. Not a soft chime. 3 hard presses, one after another. Evelyn frowned. Who thinks they can interrupt my toast? She said. The guard went to answer. Music faded on its own as voices carried down the hall. Footsteps followed. A group of people in dark suits walked into the living room. No evening clothes, no smiles. One man at the front held a thick folder. "This is a private event," Evelyn said. "You are not invited." "Mrs. Evelyn Coleman?" the man asked. "Yes," she said, "owner of Solaris Group and this home." "My name is Calvin Brooks," he said. "I represent a group of banks that loaned money to Solaris Group. We're here under a court order." A chill slid through the room. "There must be some mistake," Evelyn said. "Solaris is strong. We have this house, a condo, cars." Calvin opened his folder. "Solaris has missed several large payments," he said. "Those loans came due this week. Notices were sent. None were answered. The company is in default. These papers show this house, the downtown condo, and several vehicles were used as collateral. There is not enough cash to cover what is owed. We are here to seize the collateral." The word seize made the air heavy. Briss' voice came out thin. "You can't take our things," she said. "My brother was rich. He left us everything."
"He left you everything tied to this debt," Calvin said. "He moved other assets years ago. They are not part of Solaris anymore."
Around them, his team moved through the house, sticking bright tags on furniture, paintings, the big TV, even the piano. Another headed toward the garage. "You have 30 minutes, one told Evelyn quietly. "You may pack personal clothing and small items. After that, this property will be locked." "You can't do this," Evelyn snapped. "This is my home." "It was the bank's security," Calvin said. "Now it belongs to the bank." Bree ran for the garage. Outside, the whine of a tow truck rose. By the time she reached the driveway, her sleek car was already halfway onto the truck. "Stop! That's mine," she shouted. "It's owned by Solaris," the worker answered. Some guests watched from the doorway, phones half raised. The party feeling was gone, leaving only cold air and the smell of fear. When the 30 minutes were up, the last guests slipped away. The bank's guards walked Evelyn and Bree to the front step. Evelyn held a small handbag. Bree clutched a shoebox of jewelry. Behind them, lights went out room by room. The big door closed with a heavy sound. A lock turned. 7 days earlier, Evelyn had shoved Imani into the rain with a suitcase. Now, she sat on her own cold step in an expensive gown, with no keys and nowhere to go. At almost the same time, far away in Paris, a different room was emptying. High above the Seine, in a boardroom, people in suits closed laptops and stacked papers. Charts still glowed on a screen at the far end. At the head of the table sat Imani. She wore a navy suit and a soft cream scarf. Her eyes were clear, focused. Months of long days had changed her. The hurt was still there, but it no longer ruled her. "So we agree," she said. "We keep the renewable energy project in Southeast Asia, but with the tighter limits we discussed. We're not here for a quick gain. We're here to build something that lasts." Several directors nodded. "Thank you, everyone," Imani said. "DL Global is my responsibility now. I intend to treat it that way." Chairs slid back. One by one, the directors left. When the door closed behind the last of them, the room fell quiet. Evening light turned the river outside to a band of dull gold. "You handle them well," Sterling said. "You don't try to sound like Darius. You sound like yourself. That is better." "I still hear other voices in my head," Imani said. "Sometimes his. Sometimes Evelyn's." "What does Evelyn's voice say?" he asked. "That I don't belong here," she said. "That I should be grateful for scraps and stay quiet in the back of the room." "And what do you say back now?" he asked. She looked out at the bridge Darius had once pointed to on a screen. "I remind myself whose name is on the papers," she said. "He didn't make me a guest. He made me the owner." Her laptop chimed. A new email popped up. Subject: Final report, Chicago. She paused, then clicked. A short file opened. Photos showed a small rental house with peeling paint. In one, Evelyn sat on a worn couch, hair dull, eyes tired. In another, Bree stood in a narrow kitchen, mouth open mid-argument. A note from the investigator said they fought often, that friends had stopped answering calls, that cards were declined, that no one would lend them money. Imani closed the message. "I thought I'd feel happy," she said quietly. "Or, at least, finished." "And?" Sterling asked. "And I mostly feel nothing," she said. "They chose how to treat me. They chose what to grab. This is just where that road led. For the first time," she added, "their lives don't control mine. That's enough." Outside, The bridge lights flicked on. Paris slipped from late afternoon into night. If you've stayed with Imani's story this far, take a second to like this video and share it with someone who might need to hear that life can change even after the worst week of your life.
In the last part, we'll see how she closes this chapter for good, and you can ask yourself what you would have done in her place today.